just wanna be free with my people to prosper and hold it down. Don't you sit and wait, contemplating on a revolution. The time is now. I just wanna be free. 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 Can't you see? I just wanna be free.
Okay. It's another episode of the Things I Wish I Knew About Money podcast. I'm your host, Camille Smith. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. It's been a minute since I've been live, but we're here. I wanted to use this platform today to talk about something that's really important that's going on in the community, and I'm very blessed to have an individual. I have many group chats where I just discuss about different things, and I got lucky enough to have this young gentleman, Waleed, to come and bless the stage. Hello, Waleed. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about the situation. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, and I actually loved your intro. And I'm so happy to be here. So thank you so much for taking on such an important topic that affects all of us directly or indirectly. And
Right.
we'll have this conversation.
Yeah, it is. And like, and if folks that understand, like, obviously I talk about finance, personal finance, and all that great stuff, but I think with something like this that is affecting our community, it's really important to reach out to someone that is aware of what's going on and being able to discuss about it and talk about it, and finding ways to actually come together to find things, right? So once again, thank you, sir. And can you tell the folks about yourself? Because I always have folks being able to, or the individuals that watch, I just need them to understand why you are the lucky chosen one and all that great stuff.
Thank you so much, Camille. Well, I'm a community organizer based in Regent Park, but I do organizing across the city of Toronto,
Mhm.
but also in communities like Moss Park, St. Jamestown, Cabbagetown. I'm a housing advocate, so I advocate to make sure that housing is a basic human right that everyone is able to access,
Right.
that it's not commodified. And I'm also supportive of youth or residents, racialized residents, but residents of from all over the city, uh,
Mhm.
pushing for equality and economic prosperity. And I do this work, supporting various organizations in my neighborhood and across the city. Uh, Primarily, the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. Um,
Mhm.
Also, the social development plan, specifically the stakeholders table of the social development plan, which is funded by the City of Toronto, $500,000 a year for 2.5 million. So in our last funding cycle, I'm the resident co-chair of the Community Benefits Oversight Working Group, which is supporting the residents of Regent Park determine how $26.8 million of community benefits are going to be allocated over the next decade or so. So, supporting my neighbors with monitoring, evaluations and benchmarks and goal setting and sustainable resourcing of community priorities, and also making sure that we have the space to do it. Um, so, so I do a lot of work that's focused on advocacy that promotes human rights and I love your topic because it's focused on economic empowerment. Uh,
Mhm.
I think that's super important. Like people, you can't do much in this system if you don't have money and the resources, to pull it off. So, I'm here
Very
to share my knowledge.
And folks, I don't know about y'all, but I'm seeing a lot of knowledge. Like, look how much you're giving back to the community, especially Regent Park. And I believe just before we started, you were talking about how you were also at something else that deals with the community. So, like, folks, I don't know about y'all, but he really is striving to work towards the community. So I'm really honored for you to be here, and I feel like you have the experience of coming to Canada or Toronto and having that experience. So how was that experience when you first came to Toronto?
Yeah, when you're a newcomer, it's a new
Mhm.
country. Actually, I won't forget because I was in Hamilton, so
Oh snap!
first Latin city, yeah, and I won't forget this memory. The
Mm.
air smelled funny. I was like, there's
To
something
my
wrong.
Hamilton folks, we're not dissing y'all, but
I got used to it, but you know what? There's now recent reports, about air pollution and the impact on the quality of life. Like we need to call it out. And I won't forget that. But it was all these things that were different. Like things
yeah,
tasted different. And
holy.
it was different because you could leave your door open. It was so safe in Canada, in Toronto,
Okay,
right? You
some
could,
parts.
yeah. It was a different experience going to school here. Whether it was in preparation for university, I went to summer school in Hamilton, and
Mhm.
that was an amazing experience. People thought I didn't speak good English, and
That's
the newcomer test, the English test, and going through that, and like just getting accustomed to the culture,
yeah,
and also finding community, and if not finding community, creating community as well, was my experience. So it was beautiful. It was
hmm
beautiful, living in not just Hamilton but Mississauga, and now my home of Toronto.
okay.
Which wherever I go around the world, I come back to Toronto and it's just home. It's just seeing the CN Tower,
Mm-hmm.
the
That's
huge,
usually the indication,
exactly.
and I'm remembering why Hamilton is like that because I remember like whenever someone's going to Niagara Falls,
Mhm.
you get that lovely whiff
Yeah,
from that I don't remember what it is, but let's say like a factory and stuff.
right.
So
Industry, yeah.
yeah,
And in the future, things are going to change, right? And hopefully,
yes,
it's going to be much more environmentally, cleaner way of managing energy, because life is so important, to me. When if you fight for human rights, you're fighting to ensure that people live with dignity and
hmm
respect, and because we're all, as human beings, we're complex, but
yes,
we're so important to each other. Like we have
very.
impact on each other. How we act, what we do, clearly impacts the way we live. um,
hmm
I think when it comes to being a part of a community, or immigrating, taking ownership that
Yes,
you are now a stakeholder in this critical society. What you do really will impact others. You know,
it does.
yeah, that's been my experience, and it's a beautiful way of living because you're also able to support folks and also learn. You also grow, you unlearn. You have to approach it with humility.
hmm
Even when it came to like my education at U of T, or my experience in the student movement, being elected as a racialized president of a students union, bringing a, yeah, bringing a project that I dreamt of since my first year, second year into fruition, a UPass program. that saved students thousands of dollars, but made a good business sense for the city, right? When it comes to increasing ridership in the future
Mm-hmm.
for transit. So it's like doing things that you love. And many of us came to Canada for many reasons. As refugees, as
Mm-hmm.
asylum seekers, as folks who are economic refugees looking for better economic opportunities. And it's important for us to realize that we have a shared experience
Mm-hmm.
that should bind us, should bring us together, so we could build a better future for future generations, not just us. Build for the future.
Absolutely, because like you say, like my parents are immigrants that came from in the 70s.
Hmm.
And obviously the main thing always, so there weren't obviously refugees but immigrants, so like they came to have a better life,
Yep.
right? And it only makes sense for refugees and asylum seekers are trying to do that as well. And we're not going to be too controversial, but if you want to, they're cool. But there are, I I have been bothered, and in a little sense that there's been different refugees that have come and had special treatments, and the fact that I barely knew about this, it wasn't until I the groups, like our group especially, was like promoting it, and I'm like, hold on, what's going on?
Hmm.
And you got to thank social media, because as of late social media has been just crazy.
Vital. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, no, no,
Vital.
no, 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 you gotta see this. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, what can I do to help? But at the same time, I am under a rock as well.
Mhm.
And I know a little bit about what's going on, but I'm not fully aware of what's going on. And I feel like if I don't know, there's absolutely 1,000 other people that aren't aware as well.
Of course, of
And
course.
I was wondering if you'd help like break it down on what's happening.
100%. So, I'll give some context to why I'm saying what I'm saying. And,
Hmm.
I've had an educational experience that was not Eurocentric, it was Afrocentric, so it's
Hmm.
colonialism, European history, American history. We have a history with indigenous nations. We talk a lot about reconciliation.
Indeed.
It's not about rhetoric, it's about action.
Hmm.
Making sure that we have housing for indigenous members of our community, but also black and other racialized members of our community, because of the historical, not just injustices but practices that continue today systemically.
Yes.
So we can't ignore the impact of white supremacy, and it's not just a local crisis. It's a global crisis as well.
Mm.
I recall when African students
Yes.
studying
Yes.
in Ukraine were told to go to the back of the line, uh,
Wow.
while Ukrainian refugees were leaving major cities because of the war with Russia.
Hmm.
And I actually lobbied decision makers across the country to change that, and the international community. I was, speaking to the press, and through that advocacy, I
Yes.
was able to, secure an international, like a number, international number that Black refugees in Ukraine could call to get
Hmm.
support to leave the country. And I did that because I had a lot at stake, even
Yes.
personally, right? Like my uncle is and my aunt and my cousins
Hmm.
live in Kharkiv. Used to live in Kharkiv, actually, in
Wow.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they were trying to escape war. We were having conversations at home of how to support them leave.
Hmm.
And I almost felt like it was a miracle, because if I didn't have that number
Yeah.
sent to me by a journalist, because of my advocacy, I would have passed it on to him, and he wouldn't have left Kharkiv on time and avoided being killed, like many other residents. And this global war has, an impact everywhere. Now there's a civil war in Sudan, because um, there's gold. There's a lot of gold in Sudan, like large reserves of gold.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians are extracting that to fund the war, and the Americans and other global powers don't want that to happen, right? And if we appreciate that there's that global context to what's going on, and not too long ago we had Black African refugees outside
Yeah.
120 Street sleeping in the rain and in really horrible circumstances. Well, we know for a fact that if you're a refugee from Ukraine, you will be sent to a hospital, the hospital if you need any medical supports, but also to the hotel where you can live or sleep with dignity.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also on a pathway to citizenship, to permanent residency and then citizenship. And those are privileges that Black refugees don't get.
Yeah.
And that is what we need to change. We can't accept that, we can't normalize that. And as folks who are members of the society need to speak up and say, demand from our elected officials,
Mm-hmm.
but also of each other, that we cannot be treating Black refugees differently than white refugees. we're
And
all
that's only
we're
fair.
all human beings. We're all human beings.
Exactly. Exactly.
And anyone who is escaping war, conflict, death, should be treated with dignity and respect. And that's those are the Canadian standards of human rights advocacy that we should embrace. We should practice what we preach. We shouldn't just talk about human rights. We should say this is how we do it in our own country, in our own cities.
Yeah.
We're loving and empathetic people, and everyone should live with dignity in the city and in our country.
You hit in the nail, because especially it saddens me that there's individuals that are sleeping in the rain. I mean, like, yes, when it comes to like, and I'm not going to like compare it fully, but like when there's citizens or Canadian citizens that are homeless, and like in the wintertime when they're out, or even the homeless folks that are in like downtown Toronto in tents. Like I passed it Monday and saw
You're right. Yeah.
and I'm like, this is wild. And I can only imagine that like some folks were like, well, they don't even help us Canadians. Why should we help them? But it's like you said, we're all human. So we need to figure out a way to be able to help.
Yeah, we're all connected to each other. We're empaths. We're social beings. We feel, and at the end of the day, we need to not do this because it's right, but it's because of the message we want to send to our youth and to future generations. You can erase a lot of hate, a lot of anger, when young people understand that there's a better way for the future, that they're not blinded or coerced to support the solutions that have never worked. And that's why I think, for example, about the housing crisis, we need more rent geared to income units. If you want those refugees who are sleeping outside 129, Peter Street,
You shook me a little. that's my house number 2. I was like, wait, what? You got me shook just a little bit.
The point is, if you want to make sure that they actually are on a pathway to home ownership,
yes,
they can't be push to the market, they have to go to rent gear to income, right?
Absolutely.
That's the pathway to home ownership. And we need to build more. And I was
Mm-hmm.
hoping current mayor Olivier Chow and the current councillors would show leadership by making sure that they set the standards for more rent gear to income housing, right? So we could address the housing crisis by providing more homes, more housing,
Yes.
especially because we've got 80,000 people on the waiting list. 80,000,
80
right?
down.
80,000, right? So, some people are not going to get a phone call anytime soon, right? So, we got to change that. We got to change
Mm-hmm.
that by demanding that our government move away from a model that's broken, that a system that's broken,
Mm-hmm.
that basically promotes this really stupid idea, right? Counterintuitive. It's very stupid. We got to say that because how could for-profit developers
Yeah.
build housing that's affordable, right? Like it's you're about making money at the end of the day, you know. And a shout out to
True.
Councillor Josh Matlow, who voted the right way, did the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
because we knew that we need to change the system to make sure that everyone has access to housing. If we don't deal with the housing crisis,
Yeah.
then we're just basically making it difficult for folks to live a healthy life.
Yeah.
There's something called the social determinants of health. Guess
Mm-hmm.
what? Housing is one of them.
Yeah. And question, when you talk about housing, you're just saying strictly whether it's for them to be able to rent or them to own a house?
Well, the best models, and some people might not want it, but home ownership is a great model because you can pass, wealth intergenerationally, or value, right, of your home, right?
Absolutely.
But what I think we need to think about is when it comes to rental
Mm-hmm.
options. What is the definition of affordable housing? It has to be sensible. It has to
Yes.
be income based. It has to be based on the needs of the residents, of the people, not driven by market forces through a market based model. Because you're basically going to be building housing for the rich who already have money.
True.
You want to make sure that people that don't have other means to access housing, that they get housing, because when they get housing, so many things change for the better, right?
Mhm.
The prospects for employment improve significantly, right? They're having a fixed address, you can participate in many things, you can access many services.
Mhm.
We need to make sure people are housed. And it's a basic human right for a reason, right?
Yes.
And governments, in my opinion, should be providing housing. That's should be one of their primary responsibilities, right?
Hey.
That's my strong belief, and that's because when you have for-profit developers, they
Mhm.
can decide who gets the access housing. Then
Yeah.
it's black, indigenous, racialized folks that are pushed out of the downtown core, and that is a manifestation of anti-black racism, right?
Mm.
So those are things that we need to call out, because
Yes.
you know who are you building housing for is a
Mhm.
question that we need to pose to folks who are policymakers and investing in the housing market. And I would like for our new mayor, Olivier Chow, to follow
Mhm.
through the commitment to providing housing, not through a for-profit model.
Mm. And it's funny you say that because I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, like Regent Park dealt with that.
Of course, of course.
Yes. I remember.
There's a lot of learning.
Remember our little things,
I
but
can I can tell you so much about Regent Park that I'm
yeah.
actually gonna be, I'm working on a book, and hopefully that's gonna be available in the future, so people could read it and learn and pass it on
Breaking
to
news.
others. But what's wonderful about the learnings that we had in
Mhm.
phases 1 to 3 is we wanted to make sure we don't repeat it in phases 4 and 5. you know.
Absolutely.
But it's actually got worse in phases 4 and 5, right? Like we don't have more rent geared to income unit. They haven't committed to a definition of affordable housing that's based on income. They
Mm-hmm.
arguing maybe based on market, like who in Regent Park can afford 80% of $3,000 for one bedroom, right? Like
Golly.
that's impossible for many
Golly.
residents for one
Yeah.
bedroom. That's one bedroom, by the way, right? So like we need to re-examine
Mm-hmm.
the stupid approvals that are happening at City Hall that are not even delivering on the bare minimum.
Yeah.
They're talking about 10-year now, affordable housing for 10 to 15 years, 25 years, not the
Now.
commitment. Yeah, not the commitment to make sure it's affordable in perpetuity, 99 years or more. Like this is social housing. We need to protect. So the housing crisis is not going to disappear anytime soon. I don't know if anyone has been misled, but it's a real crisis that's impacting people today,
Yeah.
having a generational impact, specifically to folks who are now trying to access housing and start families. Decisions are made to postpone, access to home ownership, or those are the challenges that are attributed to the housing crisis. And I think governments must show leadership by investing directly in building housing, through their own agencies, and not just waiting for the speculation to
Mm-hmm.
continue to leave out many from the promise of home ownership.
Yeah. So then my question is, because I know that, and it makes sense that we are trusting in the government to do what they do, or even the province. But I remember that there was the mayor. She suggested that the community actually does something about it. And I was watching Big Up Dr. Vibe and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Dr. Vibe and Ryan, they were talking. Ryan is actually talking about how ACBN and his wife Cher
Mhm.
um actually did their part to try to help and volunteer. And I was wondering, should we even rely on the government, and it's like up to us because it's our community?
That's a very good question because
Which
you
I
know I I talked about the impact of white supremacy. I talked
Mhm.
about how Ukrainian refugees are treated differently than Black refugees who we saw
Yes.
how they've been living until they got the support of the Black community that through mutual aid programs was able to come in and support the Black refugees that were in crisis. And let's think about, for example, you know, why, many refugees, actually
Mhm.
Black refugees, have been getting support prior to the mainstream coverage, right? There's
Okay.
been a lot of mutual aid programs, folks hosting refugees,
Nice.
newcomers, as we like to call them. They're
Mhm.
newcomers
Mhm.
or asylum seekers, and they're folks who are you know basically were shocked by
Mhm.
how the infrastructure or the system. The infrastructure was not there, but the system
Mhm.
failed.
Mm.
Right? We had refugees who lost their ID, couldn't get reports done, police reports done. They were like, folks who lost their luggage, couldn't get some, like, people were in desperate
Oh,
means, and
that's Air Canada issue.
we all have
Or
one of those
whatever.
for sure. I lost bags, man. Those guys, oh my god.
Shout out
Anyway,
to No, I'm joking, because some of y'all are tripping. Like, stop damaging my bags. And losing them too, especially losing
exactly.
them.
Well, of course, that's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of people. But like, I think it's important for us to make sure that we create this, or at least not even create. We actually put in place the supports that already exist to
Yes.
better support newcomers, whether
Yeah.
they're refugees or they're asylum seeker, or, like we just making sure that it's a one-stop spot, where they're able to get all the not just referrals but actual supports. They don't need to be
Mm-hmm.
sent away to someone else. They need support. They need help with translation, with
Yes.
accommodation, with making sure that they have an understanding of the process or how to access important resources to be able to live in the city, instead of just being left
To
to
fend for themselves. But I
exactly.
feel, so correct me if I'm wrong, because like obviously you know the steps on being a newcomer. Because okay, so when you say things like that, um, because like my mom worked at citizenship and immigration, and I also know that they had like individuals that would help. Like there's translators, there's um immigration lawyers,
Mhm.
immigration what's the word, like agents in a
Mhm.
sense, like that will help.
The immigrant
um
services.
yeah, like that, like things like that, but obviously
Yeah.
we know those things cost money.
Mhm.
But is there, I wish, and maybe this is like something that like we can work together, or just other folks that are listening would be able to take this in, is there should be a way that we have a service for that, like in a non for profit way, to give access to that, right? To help folks like have a streamless way of coming to Canada, and like having the opportunity, instead of being out in the rain, that we have a business or a black owned place that has like a hotel and things, right? I just feel like, but that at the same time, the community working together like that, it's coming, but we have to structure that type of idea so this doesn't happen again. And I
Well,
feel like
it all depends on like what we value, right? Whether we
mhm,
share those values. Do
yeah.
Black lives really matter to people, right? Like I will ask that question simply, right?
Mhm.
Because if you're talking about Black refugees, they're not being treated the same, and I think we need to make sure that our governments are held accountable, a federal government, but
Mhm.
also our other levels of government, to make sure that they've invested in the appropriate supports, for all refugees, including Black
Yes.
refugees,
Mhm.
because if you're sending the message that we're open to white people, white immigrants, white refugees,
Mhm.
it's basically racism, right? It's anti-Black racism. So we need to send the message as Canadians that all refugees are welcome here.
Absolutely.
And
And
that
you're not going to be
means,
stranded.
of course, and right now they actually programs in place
Mhm.
provide a pathway to citizenship, and I think those are opportunities that should be made available to all refugees. I would
Absolutely.
argue Black refugees should have a pathway to citizenship as well, and should have the necessary supports to integrate in our
Mhm.
society by accessing opportunities good that lead to good jobs, and be able to provide you know contributions to
Mhm.
society. People are going to pay their way in the long term, right? And those are things that we forget. It's like,
Yeah.
we need immigrants. We should be thankful that we have people fleeing, coming to Canada, and wanting to contribute to our society. And we've got a shortage in so
Mhm.
many of our social services sectors. I'm thinking about our healthcare system. We need more doctors, we need more trained nurses.
True,
uh,
because I think in the group, because, and hold on, which support, is it support our own? Yes. So
yes.
the no one knows that I'm in like a hell lot of groups, but this one especially support our own people. um we definitely show Like I see someone sending about scholarship programs, or you
Yeah.
posted something about Regent Park residents upset with approved redevelopment plans, and Ryan talking about volunteer. Like these are needed, right? These type of things, like
Yeah. Well,
having
we got to share knowledge. We got to share resources. We got to share opportunities. We got to have each other's back. You know,
absolutely,
like look what happened to the African Black refugees. It was Black people in Toronto and across Ontario that came together to say we got to
yes,
support our people, right? We have to support our people because no one else is stepping up to do anything, and we need to step up because you know what, our government actually has failed. And look
mm.
how much money the current mayor Olivia Chow has been able to get out of the federal government because of
Golly.
the suffering of Black people. $97 million, right?
Nine.
Now I question whether that $97 million is going to go directly to support
Mm-hmm.
African refugees, right? And you know, like those are the questions that need to be posed because
True. Oh,
resettlement costs money, but most importantly, we need to make sure that the system, like the shelters, like you know, there's going to be more refugees coming from all over the world,
yes.
Africa, Ukraine, you
Yeah.
know, there's you know.
Caribbean
Caribbean,
and all that.
everywhere, right? So we need to make
Yeah.
sure that everyone is supported fairly,
Mm-hmm.
equally, with equity and empathy.
Yes.
Because I think it's important to do unto others what you like for them to do unto you, right? You
I
imagine
I
if you
agree.
were that refugee coming to Canada and how you be treated will determine how you feel about your new home.
You you're hitting in the nail, sir. Like it's true, and I like how you said that she was able to get, what do you say, 19 million,
97,
97, and
$97 million.
I have to big up the organizations that I've heard so far. So like ACBN has done something.
Of course.
The
Great
Canadian,
job.
sorry,
Good job.
Jamaican Canadian Association.
Yeah.
I think there's another one. No, that's the same one. Uh, there's gosh, Wes Hall. I seen him post something
Of course.
about
There have
black,
been
yeah,
so many
black
people.
girls.
There have been business owners. I know in
Yes,
Moss Park, a
yeah.
Sudanese woman who's a business owner who's been
Mm-hmm.
supporting Sudanese refugees, like, you know, from before this thing was even out there in the mainstream. You know,
Golly.
there's so many unknown heroes in our community,
Yes,
from the Black community, that have
yes,
been so vital to this work, and you know, and allies, you know,
yes.
folks, you know, from other not necessarily Black communities, but you know, people who deeply care, human beings like all of us, who
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make an impact and support, you know, the most vulnerable refugees.
And I want to, then if that's the case, I want to praise the silent heroes and allies, because that needs to be recognized.
Yeah.
Oof. That needs to be recognized. Sorry. That needs to be recognized, that it's not going unnoticed, because I feel like always the news always shows that things are not being noticed, but we there are folks that do notice, right?
Yeah.
And it's only fair that we recognize those as well. And I really want to praise those individuals. And but I also know that I've seen a lot of like, oh, donate here, volunteer support. What do you think is the best way to support, or yeah, to support this cause at this very moment?
It's an excellent question. Well, short term, you know, mutual aid always helps. A donation will always help. You know, your volunteer, even if you can't afford it, you know, the economic situation is not the best now. Some people might not have, you know, a lot of disposable income. Mortgage rates are going up, but you know, charity, or you know, in my faith we call it zakat. You know, giving back to your community is vital. It's important.
Yes.
So I think that's the one thing I always encourage people to do is find a local or an organization that is trusted,
Mm-hmm.
and donate your time or your money and help out. But that's the short term. Long
Yeah.
term,
Mm.
push for more rent geared to income. Push for housing. Refugees need housing like everyone else, and we all know we're living in the midst of a housing crisis. And I
Mm-hmm.
think more housing that could be built that's really uh, not playing around with the definition of affordable housing. Like we want it to be rent geared to income,
Yeah.
RGI units, permanent social housing for our community, which includes newcomers like refugees and asylum seekers.
Mm-hmm.
That is critical. Like that
Yeah.
is one way to help um, address the crisis in the long term. And then the next thing is, be a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
get involved, help, support, a newcomer, a refugee, get access to a good job, live the Canadian dream, be able to own a home someday, give back. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many things that we could do. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the power of in each one of us,
Yes.
and especially collectively, like we can transform, how the supports are provided
Yeah.
to newcomers, right?
Mm.
So I think we need action right now, not rhetoric. I think we need respect and an acknowledgement that the government failed, and not all solutions have to come from the government because
Mm-hmm.
the people make the government, and people can step in
You're
and
right.
do the right thing and just make sure that future governments act in good faith.
Yeah. And if the government doesn't have the people's back, at least we know that the people have the people's back. And that's I honestly I've seen it, different groups, social media, all that. So I'm loving that, or different platforms are discussing about it and trying to make it work. And so I would just say keep it up, or and also learn about the long term support, because yeah, mentorship, trying to have a way for housing to be affordable. Woo! Because golly, the affordability right now is crazy. But hopefully they're able to, or we as the people find a way. Because like I was just having a discussion today before we jumped on. Someone like having that idea of affordable housing, and maybe it's not about the for-profit businesses that are trying to make a buck, but actually for the folks like collectively to come together trying to figure out,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Because
housing, there's going to be a price to it, right? And like, even if governments, were going to build housing like what we're pushing for right now, instead of the for-profit sector,
yeah.
the government making sure that housing is built that's affordable, and I will argue that this would be an opportunity for, you to, improve your financial literacy, have an understanding of the impact of interest rates going
Mm-hmm.
on to 5%. So if you had variable rates, whoo, that's a very painful situation you're in,
Harsh.
very hard, right? So, it's important for folks to take the time to grasp this knowledge, but also to
Hmm.
save, to look into ways of accessing home ownership, um,
Yes.
and making sure that it's also sustainable in the long term. Because what we don't want is we want to remove the speculation from the housing market.
Mm,
Because if our housing market, it's such a large part of our economy, if it's too vulnerable, it could have an impact on the entire economy, which is not good for anyone. So we need to protect our housing market by making sure it's stable.
yeah.
And I think the interest rates are going to lead to a correction, and there'll be an opportunity for people to buy homes in the future. I don't see a home what, 3 bedroom home going for
Yeah,
$1.2 million, 1.3 million. Like that's not sustainable.
that's
When you
wild.
go south of the border,
Yeah,
1.2 is buying a nice mansion, 10
right?
bedroom mansion, right? Like you can get for 300,000 or $200,000 a nice house, right? So it's not sustainable because it's
Exactly.
based on speculation. It's not based
Hmm.
on the costs.
Yeah.
And I think our governments, have an important role, whether it's a municipal, provincial, federal level,
Hmm.
to put in the regulatory mechanisms to make sure that we don't go through what we went through again. Because I actually suspect it's going to uh, ruin a
Increase.
lot. Yeah, it's going to hurt a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
In financially,
Mhm.
losing a home, being displaced is a very traumatizing experience. And I hope that we help people now,
Yeah.
um, specifically the most vulnerable members of our community, to start preparing for those opportunities, so that you know this could be an old topic. With the housing.
Indeed, indeed. And I mean, I feel like I've talked about it before. Like I've heard strategies or solutions for it. Definitely would love to like bring on individuals that, have suggestions, and just to see which one works for everyone, right? Because like
Yeah,
there's
there's so many models for
yeah,
homeownership. Land trusts, you look it up. Land trust,
land trust.
yeah, communities
Okay.
can come together by, and getting funding from to form a land trust. They could
Mm.
start making sure that that homes stay in the community and the ownership
Ah,
stays in the community. You
yes.
know,
Okay.
there's so many innovative ways of making sure that people can start co-ops. There's so many programs that people could tap into to better
Yeah.
support access to home ownership. But it's gonna require you know
Work.
leadership. Yeah, leadership in the community, to be honest, leadership at our government level, to say we want to invest in housing and make sure it's
Mm.
sustainable long term. We want to make sure everyone has access to housing. We want to
Yes.
make sure there's a pathway to home ownership. We want to make sure that we're intentional in
Absolutely.
supporting all the residents of Toronto, right? Everyone living in our community.
Mhm.
And let's remember that we're an empathetic people. We share values. To
Yeah.
respect human rights. To not just to adhere but also promote human rights. And there's a human right that's critical, which is the basic right to housing, and human right that we need to ensure that it's funded in the long term, like building housing in the long term, and making sure that it's not a casino, because when it crashes, everyone's gonna lose.
Mhm.
Everybody's
Mhm.
gonna lose. It's not just you know the poor, but I think also the rich are gonna lose money. Everyone's gonna lose money. And
Especially, yeah, especially the ones that have multiple properties, right?
of course,
Um, that's true. That there's golly, and it's even like the affordable housing for like individuals that are in shelters or
yeah,
in the park. That would be ideal for them to be able to um have an opportunity, right? Because I think everyone should have the opportunity to have a safe place
of
to lay their
course.
head. Um, I'm not saying the tent isn't comfy if you get the nice air mattress and everything, or nice sleeping bag, but there's nothing better than being able to sleep in a warm sheltered place,
It's
right?
bare minimum, bare minimum.
Yeah, like that.
Come on, you live in Canada, one of the most wealthiest country in the world, and you're telling me that not everyone can have access to a home or a roof on top of their head? That's preposterous. It's because of greed and it's because of speculation. It's actually very, my opinion, racist and discriminatory because, when you allow that to happen, it's going to have
Mhm.
an impact on everyone in society. You know,
So true.
uh, yeah, and the most progressive countries that guarantee that they have less social ills, they have less crime, they have less problems in general because
Well, Canada, yeah. If we're gonna talk about our cousin down below, no sir.
yeah, but we're not making but now it's gonna get challenging because
Mhm.
their homes are not as expensive as here, right? So this is
True.
we're now in a very awkward position because what happens in the next couple of years with the
Yeah.
housing market is going to determine how people live, and I want to make sure that people have opportunities, and the only
Yes.
way to do that is making sure that they have stability through access to home ownership or access to housing.
True.
um, and
Golly. Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad that you talked about financial literacy because I also want to know what are the three things you wish you knew about
um,
personal finance when you were growing up.
Interesting. There have been so many new ways to save and invest, tax-free savings accounts, ways to, invest
Mhm.
in, you know, uh, when it comes to the long term, the SP 500, like the various investment tools that exist
Yeah.
that people should know about, right? And also, making sure that if you're a student, you can have access to free accounts where you don't have to pay fees. There's certain ways to save money and invest it wisely,
Mhm.
and also like spending habits. It's important to have a budget. Make sure that you allocate funds for not the
A
best of
rainy day.
days.
So I know
You need
I
fun.
knew you would say.
Not the best of days, I will say. It could be
I
rainy, it could be snowy, I don't know.
blizzard, Lord
Blizzards.
Jesus.
Anything could happen. Anything could
Right?
happen. It's an emergency, right? So you need to be prudent financially
Mhm.
to be able to make the right decisions now because it's
Yeah.
going to impact your future. And if you save and invest wisely, the amount of wealth you'll be able to accumulate over time is going to be significant because you're learning. And now
Yep.
we're living in a new era where there's artificial intelligence, where there's so many ways to learn
I
and
know.
understand how to invest. You don't have to necessarily go to someone who's an expert. You could be your own expert by learning
True.
through the
But
new
wisely.
accessible, of
As
course,
as
and
long as
and
we
be
do it
able to,
wisely.
of course, and be able to access experts as well. That's being
Mhm.
smart. That's being diligent. Just because you have the knowledge, doesn't mean you have the lived experience or the expertise,
True.
right? So you want to access that. So there's so many things that you could do to set yourself and your family in the best financial position,
Mhm.
and also it requires investing in yourself. I always say, your greatest investment is what lies in here, right? And you know go to school, learn through other opportunities, right? Whether it's seminars or workshops, but keep learning. Life is all about learning and unlearning
Uh,
the things that don't really work.
agree. Agree.
So financial literacy is so important, but there are ways you can get access to it. There's so many youth groups right now that are providing financial literacy workshops. There are some organizations and agencies in your neighborhood that could be providing that. So check around, find out if those opportunities exist. But if it doesn't exist, ask for one. Help. Advocate for one to be put together for you, for your neighbors, or for yourself. Uh,
Mhm.
Reach out to your bank. Reach out to your credit union.
Yes.
Say, do you
Yes.
have any financial workshops that I could access? Like, be
Which
resourceful.
which they do. Which they do. Like a lot of them do. Like I know TD has RBC. There's
Most
many.
banks do. Most banks,
Yes.
most financial institutions do,
Yeah.
because it helps them. Because they would have to
Of
explain
course.
things as much.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people sometimes just put their money in a checking account and forget all about it, and
Mm-hmm.
years will have passed. And like I remember, I can give you a couple of examples of things I wish I did differently. Back in 2011,
Yeah.
there was an opportunity for me to buy a home in Regent Park. It was going for $330,000, three
Yeah.
bedroom.
Wow.
All I had to do was put a $5,000 deposit, and then just
Hmm.
sit in the washroom for about 5 years, and
Yeah.
I would be a millionaire, right?
I
So the
know there's
house
so
went up.
much.
Yeah, the house from 300,000 to
Yeah.
1.2 million in 5 years. Okay, that's a
Damn.
speculation in the housing market that we're dealing
Hmm.
with right now, and I didn't do it, right. Uh, you know, because I thought maybe it was way overpriced when it was not. But you don't know. Hindsight is 50-50. So that's one
Indeed.
example. Of something you can plan for, right? But,
Exactly.
but there was, another opportunity. For example, Tesla. Back in the day, I could have bought shares, become a multimillionaire, right? But
AM, AMD,
AMD, there's so many things could
all
have
of them.
invested in, could have become multimillionaire. But the issue is, are you surrounded with people who are
Mm,
not just financially literate, but motivated
yes.
to take action? Like some of my friends right now who are multimillionaires back
Yeah.
in university were like coming together to invest in condos, or invest in other things in the economy, right?
Yeah.
And made a bit of money, but because they
Understood.
they understood, but they also took
Mm,
a risk. They took a risk, a calculated risk, that they
yes.
might be, a future in this investment, right? There may be a lot of profit, there may be a lot of growth, and that would require you to learn and to be financial literate. So, you know, we live in a society where information comes quick,
Yes.
things change quick. So it's important to be up to date on all your investments. Meet with a counselor, meet with an expert. At least once a year to examine your financial plans. And take advantage of the tools that exist, right?
Right?
Because there's so many, tax-free savings account being one of them.
Yep. Yep.
RSPs, like all those ways to be able to save money and invest wisely.
Hmm. It's I know there's so many stocks that I've seen because I'm addicted to stocks as well that I'm like, dang, if only if only.
Yeah.
And but I always tell folks, instead of like, yes, we can be annoyed at what happened in the past.
No, plan for the future.
Exactly, because the best time to buy it, I think the saying is yesterday,
Yeah.
but the second best time to buy it is today.
Still, of course. Of course.
So you might as well, especially if, but there's certain companies. As long as you find a company that is respectful and willing and it's projected to do well, then go for it.
Yeah, like we know what the challenges are, right?
Mm,
And any company, I will argue, that's going to invest in solutions that are practical,
exactly.
is a good investment. And we're going to have governments regulate and incentivize investments in certain things, and
Yeah.
innovation,
Mm-hmm.
technology. Look at all the tech companies making money, right? Like there's certain things that are always going to be supported. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like too big to fail, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to be sound investments in the long term. And you're going to always have cult personalities like Elon Musk, or you know I know
Woo!
uh,
I know
our
he's
friends from
something else.
Apple, folks who are going to be pushing for innovation in their own products, and you're going to have new ones, new folks who are going to
Push
excite
it.
people, right, and
Yeah.
push the envelope. And I'll say, in the era of artificial intelligence, you need to do your due diligence as well. Make sure that
Golly.
you understand the product
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
service that's been offered, right? Because there'll also be folks who are going to try to take advantage of
Yep.
folks who don't have that knowledge and expertise, right? So,
So it's
um,
very important to do your due diligence, especially when you use AI. Because I even seen someone sent me something about AI credit report changing. I'm like, I would not do that. You must have mud. Like that
listen,
is too
it's because we
scary.
live in a system where people want to do as much things as they can with as
Mm-hmm.
little effort as possible,
But
right? And this shortcuts is actually going to lead to some serious impact in people's lives.
true.
I'm worried about the professions that are going to be lost in the long term, but made vulnerable in the short term.
Yeah.
And it's going to require some serious conversations in our society, right? Because right now there's no regulation, zero, which means you know
Like
anything can happen.
yeah, and it's like the but I feel like it's just like the internet, right?
Yeah,
We had to learn to adapt, or like technology, we had to learn to adapt. And I
we
think
still had to regulate stuff. We still
yes,
had
yes,
to.
yes, yes. So soon time it might,
Yeah.
but
But in
uh
the beginning, everyone's like, let's try it out. Let's see how it
I'm
is.
not gonna lie. I like AI, but there's certain things I'm not gonna do. Like I get a high off of like, oh AI, what should I discuss about today?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh snap. But it's like
Yeah.
you have to be
You're
mindful.
interacting with, an artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's
It's different. It's new to us as human beings.
yeah, and when something's
It's a new
new,
experience,
right?
right? So it's exciting. So you're like, wow. And over time, we'll understand its consequences. But I'm always a strong believer that the more people have access to knowledge, the better it
True.
is. So, you know, people are always fearful in the beginning of new technology or new way
Indeed.
of doing things, right?
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think we need to be pragmatic, but be healthy about it too. Like if we see, look what's the impact of phones on kids.
Ah,
I
true.
would say look at the impact of the pandemic on kids as well, right? It's
Not
not just
only kids,
technology, but
adults too. Golly.
yeah,
Like,
so like young minds need to be exposed to social intelligence and how to
mhm,
talk things through, conflict management, conflict resolution, right? And if you
yeah.
don't have those opportunities for learning,
Mhm.
not easy, right? It's more challenging. So I think we need to better prepare, young minds and young people, uh,
Mhm.
but also support our seniors who are now more, confused about things that are going on in our society, like AI. When I bring up AI to like a senior, they're like, "What are you talking about?"
No, I don't even discuss that with my grandma. Like, it doesn't even make sense to have that conversation. Like, like let's just keep it simple. Like, she's still trying to get used to a cell phone, and then talks about she wants a smartphone. I'm like, stop this right now.
It's exactly, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And how or what other, because I remember you were talking about a book, but we'll keep it
yes.
on the hush, keep it on the hush. But what are other avenues, or what are you currently doing? Because I'm really excited, and I really want the folks to follow you and get to know you more, just so they're able to see a different side, because I always think it's great to have different sides of what's going on in Toronto, Canada,
Yeah,
globally, and all that good stuff. So what
yeah.
currently are you what avenues are you working on at the moment?
Oh well, I'm an environmentalist. I led the environmental movement in Toronto when I was president of the Toronto Environmental Alliance, and I always believed, you know, racial justice is a
Hmm.
prerequisite to environmental justice, because I believe that there's, environmental racism, that there are, the global South people, black racialized folks have to deal with the impact of the climate crisis in a very real and traumatic way. We're talking
Hmm.
about, environmental refugees, people migrating to the global north, to countries like our own, like Canada or the US, and because, of extreme challenges to where their home, where they live, whether it's flooding, or droughts, and I think that's going to be one of the,
Wildfire.
of
Golly.
course, of course, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges that we're
Hmm.
going to have to deal with. So I'm putting my effort in supporting not just my neighbors, but
Yes.
organizing to promote real solutions, green jobs in our communities,
Nice.
but also, understanding the importance of indigenous solidarity by following through with the call for reconciliation
Mm.
with indigenous nations, understanding that we're connected to our planet, we're connected to the environment. We need to preserve and protect our environment for future generations. We're not all gonna get on a trip to Mars with Elon Musk. It's not gonna happen. We gotta protect our planet as much as
Yes.
possible. Some folks
Yes.
have their solution, just ignore everything and save up for a ticket to go to Mars. I'm not one of those people. I want to protect this planet as much
Exactly.
as possible, right?
Yeah.
And we have to be aware of the fact that our actions today will determine what happens in the future. So I know it's hard to do the right thing sometimes, because you feel like, well, other people might not be doing the right thing. Why should I recycle? Why should I care about
Mm.
demanding most sustainable, a much more sustainable way of living? But I always remind myself
Hmm.
that we're all interconnected. The harm we cause on one will impact everyone else. And Martin Luther King, put it best. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere,
Yeah.
right? So we have to recognize that we can't stand by and allow injustice to be the norm, or to be rationalized. And we live in a challenging world, where there's serious challenges beyond the environmental crisis. We have a war that's ongoing between Ukraine and NATO, and um, Ukraine, NATO, and Russia.
Yeah.
Like those, like those conflicts have an impact even on simple things like the food supply. Like
Yeah.
grain in the market. And a lot of this grain is going to Africa, right? Because
Yeah.
of global treaties and global institutions, right? That control how the global market is. I don't know if a lot of people know that,
Hmm.
but grain is actually subsidized by governments, right? In the north, so that people can't even actually compete in the global markets, right?
Yeah.
So these are real challenges. There's a food insecurity, so there's so much that needs to be done.
Hmm.
So what I would recommend is that get involved in some way. Pick something that you're passionate about, that you
Yeah.
love,
Hmm.
and champion for solutions that are that makes sense, that is evidence based.
Yes.
And to be honest, nothing's impossible to do. Like, I've done so much in the short span of my life
I like that.
that I'm so proud of, and I'm so excited about what I'm going to do in the next phase of my life, right? Because I know there's so much that is possible. I actually feel that we collectively can bring so much of um, a new era, something new in this world. A focus on respecting and promoting basic human rights. Um, and we can be an example for the world. We can be an example for each other. Join the movement, join a movement in your community, support our people. Don't be a bystander. And one of the things that I'm also passionate about is um, not just housing, which I spoke about earlier, and in the environmental, justice, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but addressing the impact of hate. I spoke about white supremacy earlier in our amazing podcast, and I think it's important for us to understand that if we don't see each other as human beings, if we don't understand that we're human beings,
Yeah.
that we're collectively invested, then all of this crisis, the environment, food insecurity, poverty, like all of these things will not be addressed. They just can't. We have to be united. We must be
Indeed.
united. You know, and
Agree.
and it takes the first step is to eliminate the systemic barriers and eliminate, end the era of white supremacy, eliminate anti-black racism, Islamophobia, all manifestations of hate that human beings experience.
Mhm.
And realize we're in it together. We're all one, and we
Agree.
have to have each other's back.
I agree. Dang. Like that. That's that in a nutshell. Like it's important to to be human, to be
Exactly.
empathetic to all situations that's happening. That's the only way we're going to be able to overcome these things. And one thing that hit me what you said was the things that we do now will affect us in the future. So I'm hoping everyone that's listening or watching is able to find a way to support what is happening, whether it's short term or long term, and reaching out, especially to if you know an organization or business, or you know someone that's in the government, or you speak to your gosh, what are they? The ones it slipped my mind for a second. You can always speak to your the person in your city just to discuss these
Counselor?
things. Yes, there. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of
Speak to them so you're able to push forward with some certain things that are happening in your city.
course, of course.
And Waleed, I thank you for blessing. Boy, you saved my life. So
No worries.
because I like I said before, I think it's really important to be aware of what's going on, and I'm so glad that the community stepped up when the government couldn't,
Yeah,
and proved that we're better together than apart.
of course. In Kenya, where I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they we have a concept. It's called harambe.
Harambe. Oh, you
Harambe.
gotta type that in the chat so I
I'll
can
put
type
I'll
it
put
so I
that
can
in the
put it.
chat. But
Yes, yes, yes,
harambe
yes.
is a form of mutual aid, basically, where
Mm,
and it stems up because sometimes you know governments or large institutions don't step in, but
mhm.
when people come together, it works out because there's so much power in the people, right?
Yes.
It's a tradition of self help, and
Mm,
it could be projects, it could be events, just people coming together. And
yes.
actually, I'll put it in the chat for you one more time. So
Damn, that would have been amazing. That would have been the
yeah,
the
so
title. Next time, don't worry.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened. But actually, that was Harambe in action. What happened when
Golly.
outside Freedom Street?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. And what I'll do is I'll put that in the show notes so folks are able to get a better understanding. And how can the folks contact you or reach out to you if they want
Sure. I'm
to?
on Instagram,
Okay.
and I can be found at Waleed Khogali.
Okay.
And I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. Same username.
Hmm.
I
Are
can
you
be
on
reached.
Threads?
Yes, I am.
Ah!
I think I was the 18th million
Oh my
person to
geez.
join. Something like
I'm
that.
not there yet. I'm not there yet.
I think I
Golly.
joined. I think within the first 24 hours or something like
Hol.
that. Yeah.
Hey, I
Um,
kudos to you. Oh man, and it's been amazing. I'm definitely gonna put because I know you have LinkedIn as well. So definitely, folks, please contact Waleed, so you're able to just get a better understanding and able to reach out, especially if you guys are from Regent Park and everything. Definitely check him
100%.
out. So I think you're down there already, right?
Of
Doing your
course,
thing.
it's my home. Yeah, but I organize across other communities as well. Moss Park, St. Jamestown.
Nice.
Let me know if you need Corktown as well. Like, I'm here to support folks who need it.
Awesome. And thank you. Is there anything else you want to tell the folks before we head out?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Had a really great time, Camille. This was such an awesome opportunity to talk about the importance of us not being bystanders and supporting, people, whether it's Black refugees, but anyone who is in need of crisis. We got to be there for each other,
Absolutely.
and I think it's important for us to be economically empowered, so
Mhm.
that we're able to step in the future, right? And I just want to thank all the heroes, people who we've not been mentioned by name but have been out there supporting refugees for the
Yeah,
past couple of months, by hosting them in their homes and
exactly. Big up
being
yourself.
yeah. So thank you.
Especially the ones that are giving up a part of their home to be part of the solution and not the problem, right?
Exactly.
Um, Golly, it's been amazing. And thank you, sir. And folks, make sure you like, subscribe, comment. I'm seeing some comments. I'm doing better at commenting and all that stuff. Or so thank you, folks. And like I said, if I will definitely put it in the chat if you want to support. I do have many posts where you can donate or support. So I'll definitely put that in the chat, and I'll put that in my stories on Instagram and stuff. Even in the YouTube, I'll put it in the YouTube because I don't know if anyone acknowledges that there's a part where you can post like we're
Yeah,
on
sure.
Instagram and stuff, right? So
Exactly.
thank you, folks, for the folks that are live and that'll be watching afterwards. Peace and love, y'all. And thank you again, Waleed. Where are
Thank
my
you.
manners? Thank you, sir. Bless up, bless up.
Financial literacy, knowledge is a must. So link the flip boss, watch the result flash, and watch your life change and feel a better cause. You have a business or a plan and want to make it. Yeah, flip and floss, how they want to manifest it. Yeah, and if you want to better manage all your credit, call the boss, flip and floss, no doubt, then we do it. Yeah, flip and floss, money literacy boss. Yeah, greatness in our blood because we're working for your cause. Flip and floss, money literacy boss. Yeah, boots up your knowledge for your minimal cost. Hey, yeah, flip and floss, money literacy boss. Greatness in our blood because you're working for your cause. Flip and floss, money literacy boss. Yeah, up your knowledge for your minimal cost.